Samuel Ortiz woke before sunrise, just as he did every morning, but the air around him felt heavier than usual. The quiet walls of the small ranch house only reminded him of how much life had changed. Once, his home had been filled with the soft humming of his wife, Elena, and the cheerful voices of his two children. But after Elena passed away from a sudden illness, everything felt colder, even in the warm Arizona light. Samuel tried his best to stay strong, mostly for his children, but everyone in town knew the truth. He was a man carrying a weight far too heavy for one person. The ranch had always required constant care. Horses needed feeding, fences needed fixing, and cattle needed watching from sunup to sundown. When Elena was alive, she balanced the work like a steady hand on a wagon wheel. She cared for the children, cooked meals, tended to sick animals, and shared every burden without complaint. Without her, Samuel felt like he was trying to run a whole world alone. And each day reminded him of the emptiness left behind. His daughter, Rosa, was only 8, though she tried her best to act older. She swept the floors, helped with cooking, and always checked on her younger brother Mateo when he cried for their mother. Samuel admired her strength, but it hurt him to see a child carrying such grown responsibilities. Mateo, only 4, still asked where Mama was, even though Rosa gently tried to explain each night. Samuel knew children understood loss in their own way, but hearing those questions still made his heart ache. That morning, Samuel sat on the edge of his bed, rubbing his eyes as he listened to the cows in the distance. Winter would be coming soon, and the ranch needed so much care. Hay needed storing, broken fences needed repair, and the small home needed patching so cold winds wouldn't sneak in. He had been delaying his supply trip to town, hoping he could manage with what little they had, but they were running out of flour, beans, and even lamp oil. The children needed proper clothes for the cold season too. He took a deep breath, stood up, and began preparing for the long ride to town. Rosa woke up before she needed to, her small feet tapping softly on the wooden floor as she peeked into his room. "Papa, are you going today?" she asked quietly. "Yes, Mija," he said with a tired smile. "I won't be gone too long." Rosa nodded, though her eyes showed the worry she tried so hard to hide. She didn't like when he went far from the ranch. She always feared something might happen, that he might not return. Samuel gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Look after Mateo. I'll be back before the sun sets." She hugged him before running off to check on her brother. Samuel saddled his horse, a calm brown mare named Luna, and secured a small list of supplies in his pocket. The ride to town usually took an hour, but the quiet road gave him too much time to think. He wondered how long he could keep the ranch going alone. He wondered how long he could stay strong for the children. And, quietly, somewhere deep in his heart, he wondered if help would ever come. The town of Red Creek was small, with only a few shops and dusty roads lined with wagons. People nodded at Samuel as he passed. Everyone knew him, respected him, and pitied him just a little. They admired his hard work, but they also saw the exhaustion in his shoulders. He tied Luna near the general store and walked inside. The familiar scent of dried herbs, grain, and old wood greeted him. Mr. Caldwell, the store owner, gave a friendly wave. "Morning, Samuel. Haven't seen you in a while." "Been busy," Samuel replied, handing him the list. Mr. Caldwell glanced over it. "Cold winter coming. You'll want extra blankets and oil." "That's the plan," Samuel said, though he knew his purse was far too light for everything he needed. As Mr. Caldwell gathered items, Samuel overheard 2 men near the counter talking in low voices. Normally he ignored gossip, but one of their sentences caught his attention. $6, that's all he wants. Says he'll move on tomorrow if no one pays. Samuel frowned. $6 wasn't much in theory, but he knew it wasn't about the price. It was about the situation. Something felt wrong in their tone. "What's he charging for?" Samuel asked casually. The older man beside him glanced around before leaning closer. "That traveling merchant, the one near the old barn on the east side, came into town yesterday. He's holding 3 Apache women who were found after some trouble near the hills." Samuel's brows pulled together. "Holding them?" For what reason? Claims he took them in for protection and wants $6 for their release. Says it's to pay for their food and shelter while they were with him. The man shook his head. Doesn't sit right with anyone, but the sheriff can't do much without federal confirmation. Tribe matters are complicated. Samuel felt a familiar heaviness in his chest. He knew what kind of situation this was. People using confusion and distance from authorities to take advantage of others. These were innocent women who had been displaced, and now someone was treating them like property to bargain with. Mr. Caldwell returned with Samuel's supplies, but Samuel could barely focus. The thought of 3 women being held unfairly weighed on his mind. "You look troubled, Samuel," Mr. Caldwell said. "I am," he admitted quietly. The store owner hesitated. "If you're thinking what I think you're thinking, remember, you already have enough to carry. You're only one man." Samuel nodded. "I know, but wrong is wrong." He paid for the supplies, though his money pouch felt frighteningly light now. He stood outside the store, staring toward the east road. He could go home, pretend he didn't hear anything, and focus on keeping his ranch afloat. That was the sensible choice, the safe choice. But when he thought of Rosa and Mateo, children who looked to him to teach them what kind of people they should grow up to be, he knew he couldn't walk away. He mounted Luna and rode toward the old barn. The building stood alone on a patch of dry land, with a few wagons parked around it. A man with a hat tilted too low sat on a barrel, looking bored. Inside the barn, Samuel saw 3 women sitting together. Their clothes dusty, their faces tired, but calm. They were alert, their eyes watching him with cautious curiosity. He felt a quiet ache seeing them there, away from their people, caught in someone else's control, unsure of what would happen next. The merchant stepped in front of him. "You hear about the fee?" he asked in a cheerful tone that didn't match the situation. Samuel didn't like how the man phrased it. Still, he kept his voice steady. "I heard you're asking for $6 to release them." "Just covering my costs," the merchant replied. "Fed them, sheltered them, kept them safe. Seems fair, don't it?" Samuel knew he wasn't feeding or sheltering anyone out of kindness. But he also knew arguing would help nothing. The important thing was making sure the women were safe. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the last of his coins. $6, practically everything he had left. "This is the fee," Samuel said quietly. The merchant counted the coins, grinned, and stepped aside. "They're yours to take." Samuel felt the words strike him in the chest. "Not mine," he thought. "No person belongs to another." But he didn't argue. He simply approached the women slowly. Showing respect, "You're free to come with me," he said gently. "I have a ranch nearby. You can rest there until we find your people. You're not obligated to stay. You're not under me. I only want to help." The women exchanged looks, tired, cautious, but hopeful. And in that moment, Samuel realized something quietly powerful. He had come looking for supplies. Instead, he found 3 lives that needed protection, and something deep inside him whispered that this journey was only beginning. Samuel stood quietly for a moment after the merchant stepped away, giving the 3 women space to decide what they wanted to do. He didn't want them to feel pressured. He simply waited, hands relaxed at his sides, showing he meant no harm. The barn was dim, with rays of sunlight slipping through the wooden planks, lighting the dust in the air. It was a calm setting, but the weight of the moment made it feel important. The 3 women sat together, speaking softly to each other in their language. Their voices were low, careful, but Samuel could sense the mixture of worry and hope moving between them. They had been through something difficult. He didn't know the full story yet, but it was clear enough from their tired faces and guarded eyes. He didn't want to ask questions too soon. They deserved patience. The oldest among them was Nalin, maybe in her late 20s. She had calm, steady eyes, and held her back straight like someone who carried responsibility. Beside her was Tansa, younger, and with a bright, alert look. She had a gentle way about her that Samuel had noticed the moment he walked in. The youngest was Kaya, barely older than a teenager, with soft features and a quiet sadness that made Samuel's heart tighten a little. They reminded him of how fragile life on the frontier could be, especially for those far from home. When they finished speaking among themselves, Nalin stood and approached Samuel slowly. Her steps were careful, not fearful, just thoughtful. She looked into his eyes with a question, rather than doubt. "You take us to your place?" she asked in simple English. Her words were slow, but clear. "Yes," Samuel replied gently. "Only if you choose to come. You can stay as long as you need. You have my respect, and you will be safe there." Nalin exchanged a final look with the other two women, and then she nodded. "We come." Samuel felt a soft relief in his chest. He stepped back, giving them room to gather their few belongings, which were very little, just a small blanket and a leather pouch. He didn't know how they ended up with the merchant or how long they had been away from their people, but he promised himself he would not let them be mistreated again. He helped them mount his horse one by one. Luna was gentle and patient, which made the women more comfortable. Samuel walked beside the horse, holding the reins while the three rode carefully. The road to his ranch was a long one, and the afternoon sun was warm but mild. As they traveled, the women remained quiet, watching the open land around them. The wide sky, the tall grasses, the distant hills. Samuel wondered what memories the land brought back for them. Sometimes Tansa leaned slightly forward, as if listening carefully to the wind. Kaya occasionally touched her necklace, a small piece of carved bone, as though reminding herself she had not lost everything. Nalin kept her eyes forward, observing the land with steady attention. Samuel didn't try to force conversation. He knew that trust didn't grow from questions but from actions. The quiet between them was peaceful, not uncomfortable. Every now and then, he would point out the direction of the ranch or mention something about the area, just to give them a sense of the land. They listened, but didn't speak much. When they reached the ranch, the sun was low in the sky, casting golden light over the wooden house and the small cluster of barns, fences, and fields. Rosa was the first to notice them arriving. She ran out of the house, her small braids bouncing, with Mateo following behind her. "Papa!" she called out joyfully. But she stopped halfway when she saw the three women. Her eyes widened with surprise, but not fear. Only curiosity. Samuel lifted his hand in a calming gesture. "It's all right, Rosa. These women will be staying with us for some time. They need a safe place." Rosa nodded carefully, looking at them again with kinder eyes. Mateo stayed close to his sister, holding her dress with one hand. He peeked shyly from behind her. Nalin stepped down first, offering the children a gentle smile. "Hello," she said softly. Rosa returned the smile, still unsure, but polite. "Hello." Samuel led the women toward the house. "You can rest inside. It's not a big place, but you're welcome here." He opened the door, and they stepped into the warm, simple home. The smell of stew Rosa had been cooking filled the room. The women looked around quietly, taking in the wooden table, the small fireplace, the shelves with simple dishes, and the beds arranged neatly. It wasn't much, but it was clean and warm. Samuel pulled out chairs for them. Rosa served bowls of stew with care, trying hard to be helpful. She glanced at the women often, her young mind full of questions she didn't yet know how to ask. Mateo watched from the corner, sleepy but curious. The women ate slowly, grateful but cautious. Samuel didn't rush them. He sat across the table, speaking gently to Rosa and Mateo, while giving their guests time to feel comfortable. After the meal, Samuel showed them where they could sleep. He gave them the room closest to the kitchen because it was warmer at night. He carried extra blankets to make sure they would not feel cold. Nalin thanked him softly, and Tansa bowed her head politely. Kaya smiled for the first time since leaving the barn, a small smile, but real. Later, when the children were asleep, Samuel sat outside on the porch, looking up at the stars. The night sky felt wider than usual, as if the world had opened to new paths he hadn't expected. He heard soft footsteps and looked up to see Nalin approaching. She stood a few feet away, hesitant but wanting to speak. "You help us," she said quietly. "You give us place, food, safety." "Why?" Samuel thought for a moment, then answered with simple honesty. "Because it was the right thing. Because no one should feel alone or lost. And because my children, they need to see kindness in this world." Nalin nodded slowly. She understood more than he said. There was a tiredness in her eyes, but also a soft relief, as if she could finally breathe without fear. "We will help," she said. "We will work with you. Not as guests. As people who respect your home." Samuel smiled gently. "You are welcome to help, but you don't owe me anything." Nalin shook her head. "Respect is not debt, it is our way." They stayed quiet for a moment, letting the night settle around them. Fireflies flickered across the field, small sparks dancing in the dark. Inside the house, the soft sound of Rosa turning in her sleep and Mateo mumbling through a dream made the home feel alive again. Samuel hadn't expected company, and he certainly hadn't expected peace, but somehow, with these three women under his roof, something inside him felt lighter. As Nalin returned to the room where Tanza and Kaya were already resting, Samuel looked out across his quiet land. He didn't know what the future held. He didn't know how long the women would stay, or where their tribe might be. But he did know one thing. This simple act, paying $6 to free them, had started something new, something good, something that felt like a turning point in all their lives. And deep in his heart, Samuel sensed that their story together was only beginning. The next morning began quietly, but something in the air felt different. Samuel woke before sunrise, just as he always did. Yet for the first time in many months, he did not feel completely alone with the weight of the ranch. As he stepped outside, he saw Nalin already awake near the corral. The soft orange light of dawn touched the land, and she stood calmly, observing the horses as if she understood them deeply. Samuel approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "You wake early," he said gently. Nalin nodded. "I like morning. It is quiet. It is good time to think." "I like," Samuel smiled. "You're welcome to look around the ranch. If you need anything, let me know." She gave a small, grateful nod before returning her focus to the horses. It amazed him how comfortable she seemed in a place she had seen for the first time only yesterday. Inside the house, Rosa and Mateo were just waking up. Rosa rubbed her eyes sleepily, surprised to find Tanza helping in the kitchen. The young woman had already started heating water and preparing a simple breakfast with what was available. Rosa watched with wide eyes as Tanza handled the pots and bowls with practiced ease. "You don't have to do all that," Rosa said shyly. Tanza smiled kindly. "I want to help." Rosa returned the smile, feeling warm inside. She had missed having another woman in the house. She didn't say it out loud, but she felt it deeply. When breakfast was ready, Samuel called everyone to the table. The three women sat politely, still adjusting to the rhythm of the household. Nalin joined them late, brushing dust from her hands after checking the horses. Kaya sat quietly but looked more relaxed than the night before. As they ate, Samuel observed the women with gentle curiosity. He wanted them to feel safe, not pressured. Rosa asked small questions: where they came from, what foods they liked, what they enjoyed doing. The answers were short but sincere. Slowly, trust began to form. After breakfast, Samuel headed outside to continue the day's work. Running a ranch meant endless tasks. He expected the women to rest, but instead, they surprised him. Nalin walked up to him near the barn. "I can help with horses," she said in a calm voice. "I worked with them many years." Samuel hesitated at first, wanting to be respectful. "You don't have to. You can rest." Nalin shook her head lightly. "Working helps me feel normal." Her words were simple, but they carried meaning. She wanted to contribute, not just be a guest. Samuel nodded. "All right. The horses will be lucky to have you." She smiled softly, and together they went to the corral. Samuel watched with amazement as Nalin approached the animals. She moved slowly, confidently, with a presence that made the horses calm. Even Luna, who sometimes became nervous, lowered her head as Nalin rubbed her mane. It was clear she had a gift. Meanwhile, Tanza stayed with Rosa and Mateo, helping with small chores inside the house. She swept the floors, helped wash dishes, and taught Rosa how to fold blankets neatly. Rosa followed her everywhere, excited to learn new things. Tanza didn't speak much, but when she did, her voice was gentle and patient. Kaya, on the other hand, wandered the land behind the ranch house. She studied the plants growing near the fences and along the small stream. She bent down, touched leaves, and smelled them carefully. Later, she returned to Samuel with a small bundle of herbs. "These good for animals," she said softly. "They help when they are tired or weak." Samuel accepted the herbs, surprised by her knowledge. "Thank you, Kaya. I didn't know these grew nearby." She nodded shyly and walked away, her hair blowing slightly in the wind. As hours passed, the ranch felt fuller, more alive than it had since Elena's passing. Samuel noticed the difference in his children first. Rosa laughed more that day than she had in months. Mateo, usually quiet, found comfort watching Tanza make small toys for him from leftover fabric pieces. By midday, he was following her around with a bright smile. Samuel couldn't deny how much lighter the house felt. In the afternoon, he worked on repairing a fence damaged by last week's windstorm. To his surprise, Nalin joined him with a wooden hammer in hand. "I can help," she said simply. He had planned to do it alone, but she seemed determined. Together they lifted planks, hammered nails, and fixed the loose posts. She worked with quiet strength, never complaining, never stepping back. Samuel admired her determination. They didn't talk much, but the silence between them was comfortable. Tanza brought water for them, her smile warm. Kaya stood nearby, sorting more herbs she had collected. Even Rosa and Mateo carried small tools to feel included. That fence had never been repaired so fast. By evening, they all gathered outside near the porch. The sky turned shades of pink and gold as the sun dipped behind the hills. Samuel sat on the porch steps while the children played nearby. Tanza taught Rosa a small hand game, laughing softly when the girl made a mistake. Kaya showed Mateo how to make shapes using small sticks. Nalin stood near the corral, watching the horses settle in for the night. Samuel felt a peacefulness he hadn't felt in a very long time. Later, as he prepared supper, he heard quiet footsteps behind him. It was Kaya. "Can I help?" she asked softly. He nodded and handed her vegetables to chop. They worked side by side, and though she didn't speak much, her quiet presence felt gentle and calming. During dinner, the atmosphere was warm. Rosa talked excitedly about everything she learned from Tanza. Mateo proudly showed the little shapes he made. The women smiled, listening with patience. After the meal, Samuel stepped outside to breathe the cool night air. The stars stretched above him like a giant map. He thought about the changes happening so quickly. Just 2 days ago, the ranch felt too big and too quiet. Now it felt like a place where life grew again. He heard footsteps and saw Nalin approaching. She stood beside him, looking up at the sky. "You have good land," she said. "It has peace. I try to keep it that way," Samuel replied softly. Nalin looked at him for a moment. "We are grateful. We know you did not have to help us. We know you gave much." "I retent." "We know you gave much." Samuel shook his head. "I didn't do anything great. I just tried to do what was right." I doing right is not small," Nalin answered. Her words stayed with him long after she returned inside. That night, as Samuel prepared for bed, he paused at the children's room. Rosa and Mateo slept soundly, more peacefully than he had seen in months. It made his heart warm. He lay down on his bed, tired but content. Through the window, he could see the dim light from the women's room. He wondered how long they would stay, and whether they would find their tribe soon. He hoped they would, but a small part of him felt sadness at the thought of them leaving. The day had changed something inside him. Their presence filled the house with warmth. Their help gave him strength. and their trust, slowly growing, felt like something precious. Samuel closed his eyes with a quiet sense of gratitude. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long while, he felt hopeful. He felt that maybe, just maybe, the ranch was becoming a place of healing for all of them. Days passed quietly on the ranch, each one settling into a gentle rhythm that felt almost natural. What began as a temporary stay slowly turned into a routine that made the house feel full again. The women worked alongside Samuel and the children, not out of debt or obligation, but from a sense of shared purpose. Every person added something different, something meaningful, and Samuel found himself grateful for their presence more than he could say. But in the midst of this new peace, there was one thing that never left Samuel's mind. The sheriff still had not found any trace of the women's tribe. Weeks had stretched on with no news, and each passing day reminded Samuel that although the ranch was safe, it was not their true home. He knew they must long to return to their people, to familiar voices and familiar land. One morning, while Samuel repaired the barn roof, the sheriff's deputy rode up in a cloud of dust. Samuel climbed down quickly to meet him. The deputy handed him a small note. "This came from Fort Sandbridge," he said. "It might be what you've been waiting for." Samuel opened the note slowly. His eyes read the simple lines, few words, but enough to change everything. The fort reported that a group of Apache families had recently settled near a new reservation north of the river. Among them were people searching for 3 missing women. Samuel looked up, hope rising in his chest. "They might be their people?" "It's very possible," the deputy said. "It's the best lead we've had." Samuel thanked him and watched him ride away. For a moment, he stayed still, letting the news settle. It was what he had wanted since the day the women came to his ranch. They deserved to be reunited with their families, yet a quiet ache filled his heart at the thought of them leaving. He found Nalin near the corral and showed her the note. She read it slowly, her calm face softening with emotion. She called Tansa and Kaya over. The 3 women stood together, speaking in their own language, their voices filled with hope and uncertainty. When they turned back to Samuel, Nalin spoke for them. "This is good news. Maybe our people are there." "We want to go." Samuel nodded gently. "Of course. I will take you. You should be with your family." Tansa smiled with relief. Kaya's eyes shone with quiet happiness. But Samuel felt a small heaviness in his chest. Though he hid it behind a warm expression, that evening, the house felt different. The women helped prepare supper as they always did, but there was a quietness in the air. Rosa sensed something was happening. "Papa," she whispered, tugging on his sleeve. "Are they leaving?" Samuel knelt beside her. "Maybe, Mija. We found a place where their families might be. They need to go home." Rosa's face fell slightly. "But I like them here." "I know you do," Samuel said softly. "They have been very good to us. And you have been good to them. But everyone deserves to be with their own people." Rosa nodded, understanding even though it made her sad. After supper, Nalin and Samuel sat on the porch while the children played in the yard. The sky glowed with soft colors as the sun dipped lower. "You have been very kind," Nalin said quietly. "You gave us a place to heal. You brought life back to this ranch," Samuel replied. "My children, they needed you. I didn't even realize how much." Nalin looked thoughtful. "Sometimes people meet for reasons we don't understand right away." Samuel breathed in the cool air, letting her words settle inside him. The next few days were spent preparing for the journey. Samuel checked the wagon, packed enough food and blankets, and made sure the horses were rested. Tansa and Kaya gathered small items they had brought with them or made during their stay. Rosa helped them fold blankets and prepare simple bundles. Rosa stuck close to Tansa, not wanting to waste a single minute. Mateo followed Kaya everywhere, holding her hand whenever she let him. The house echoed with soft emotions, gratitude, sadness, hope, all mixed together in a way that felt heavy yet gentle. Finally, the morning of departure arrived. Samuel loaded the wagon while Rosa hugged each of the women tightly. She tried not to cry, but her eyes shone with a soft sadness. "You'll visit?" she asked Tansa sweetly. Tansa brushed a hand over her braids. If the land allows, little one, we will remember you. Kaya knelt to Mateo's height and handed him a small, carved wooden bird she had made. For you, she said softly. Mateo held it tightly and nodded, though his small face looked unsure. Nalin placed a gentle hand on Samuel's arm. We are ready, Samuel nodded, though he felt a quiet ache. He took the reins, the women climbed into the wagon, and Rosa stood with Mateo at the edge of the yard, waving until the wagon rolled out of sight. The journey north took several days. The land changed slowly as they traveled, from open fields to rocky slopes and tall trees. The women grew more alert as they came closer to the river, their eyes scanning the horizon for familiar shapes, familiar sounds. They shared stories along the way. Samuel kept the conversation gentle, asking about their favorite seasons, their childhood memories, their skills. In return, they asked about the ranch, about Rosa and Mateo, about the things Samuel hoped for in the future. These were simple conversations, but they carried warmth. At night, they camped near the water. The women sang soft songs that blended with the sound of the river. Samuel listened quietly, feeling honored to hear the melodies they had held close to their hearts. One evening, Nalin sat beside the fire and said, "We will always remember what you did. Kindness like this is not forgotten." Samuel looked into the flames. "I didn't expect anything in return. I only wanted to help. That is why it matters," Nalin replied. Finally, on the 5th day, they reached a settlement near the new reservation. Smoke rose gently from a cluster of lodges. Children played near the river. Adults carried baskets, prepared food, or worked on tools. The sound of movement and voices filled the air. As the wagon approached, several people looked up. Then, suddenly, a cry rang out, a joyful cry. A group of women ran forward, calling out the names of Nalin, Tansa, and Kaya. The 3 women stepped down from the wagon, tears in their eyes, and were wrapped in warm embraces. Samuel stepped back, giving them space, watching the reunions with quiet relief. It was the moment he had wanted for them all along. Yet, as he watched them laugh, cry, and speak rapidly with their loved ones, a small part of him felt the sting of loss. They were home. But his own home would feel emptier now. After the embraces and greetings settled, Nalin approached him with her family beside her. "You brought us back," she said. "You gave us hope again." Samuel shook his head. "You carried your own hope. I only helped you reach this place." Nalin placed her hand over her heart. "We will not forget you." Samuel smiled softly, tipping his hat. He climbed into the wagon and turned the horse around. He didn't look back, though he felt the women's eyes on him, until he disappeared from view. As he rode back toward his ranch, the road felt long and strangely quiet. The land around him seemed bigger than before, as if it knew something important had changed. He had brought them home, but in doing so, he had also changed his own heart in ways he didn't yet understand. And the ranch waiting for him was no longer just a place of work. It was a place that carried memories of unexpected friendship, gentle healing, and new beginnings. He returned to the ranch that evening with a quiet mind, even though his day had been long and filled with unexpected turns. The sun was already settling behind the hills, giving the sky a warm golden color. As he rode toward his home, he could see the small wooden house standing strong against the open land. The 3 women walked behind the wagon, choosing to stay close but still keeping their distance from him, as if unsure how much trust they could place in this man who had taken them away from a life they did not choose. Still, he drove slowly to match their pace, making sure they were not left behind. When they reached the ranch, his children ran out as they always did. The little boy held a wooden horse, and the girl had a small blanket in her hands. They stopped when they saw the 3 women. Their faces showed confusion at first, but not fear. Children often sense the truth faster than adults. They simply looked at the women, then at their father, waiting for an explanation. He knelt down to their level and told them gently that these women would be staying with them for some time. helping around the house and the land. The children nodded, accepting the answer with the simple innocence that came naturally to them. They did not ask for more. The younger one even waved shyly at the women, who responded with small, cautious smiles. Inside the house, everything was quiet as the women looked around. The rancher noticed how their eyes moved slowly over the walls, the furniture, the cooking pot still warm on the stove. Their expressions showed confusion and caution, but also a small hint of relief. This place was peaceful. No chains, no shouting, no fear. The rancher stepped aside and let them look around freely. He could feel the weight of responsibility settling more firmly on his shoulders. These women were strangers to him, yet their presence already felt heavy with meaning. He knew the world was not kind to people like them. They had been through hardships he could only imagine, and he did not want to add to their burden. Still, he also knew that helping them meant more work, more patience, and more understanding than he was used to giving. He walked toward the kitchen to prepare supper. The house was clean but simple, with wooden floors and a few shelves holding plates and jars. Without a word, the oldest woman stepped forward. She gently took the cooking spoon from his hand, her eyes asking for permission more than her gestures did. He nodded, stepping aside. She seemed to relax a little and began preparing the meal. The other two watched her for a moment, then slowly joined in, chopping vegetables and arranging bowls. The three of them moved in a way that suggested they were used to working together. Their hands were steady. Even though their lives had recently been turned upside down, the rancher watched them quietly, trying not to make them uncomfortable. He noticed that they communicated with each other through small gestures, light touches on the arm, or brief glances. It was a language all their own. When supper was ready, the kids ate happily at the table, while the women sat a small distance away. The rancher tried to encourage them to join, but they refused politely with soft voices. They seemed uncomfortable taking space at the table, as if they believed they did not belong there. So he allowed them to choose what felt right, trusting that time would change things naturally. Later, he showed them the room they could share. It was simple but clean, with blankets and a lamp. When the women stepped inside, they looked relieved to see a place that felt safe, even if unfamiliar. He gave them time to settle, then went to tuck in his children. When the house grew quiet, he finally took a moment to sit on the porch. The night sky stretched wide above him, filled with stars. A soft wind brushed across the grass. He felt the weight of the day but also a gentle sense of hope. Something about bringing the women here felt like the right decision, even though he did not fully understand why. He knew he had rescued them from a difficult situation, but the truth was that they had also brought something new into his home, something peaceful and steady, like the calm that comes after a long storm. Over the next few days, life at the ranch began to change in small but noticeable ways. The women woke early each morning, bringing order to the house in ways the rancher never managed alone. They cooked warm meals, washed clothes, and even helped teach the children small things, like how to fold their blankets properly. The kids grew more comfortable around them, especially the little girl, who often followed them around like a quiet shadow. The rancher saw these changes, and though he tried to help where he could, the women moved so smoothly together that he sometimes felt unnecessary. Yet, they never made him feel unwelcome. Their actions were simple, respectful, and thoughtful. The house felt different now, calmer, more alive. Still, the rancher could sense something deeper beneath their quiet movements. A history they carried with them. A story they did not speak about. Sometimes he would look over and see one of them staring into the distance, as if remembering something heavy. He never asked. Knowing such things could not be rushed. Trust was like soil, it needed time to soften. One evening, as he was repairing a fence post, he noticed the youngest woman watching the sunset with the children. Her gentle smile was different from the quiet, uncertain expressions she usually wore. It was soft and warm, almost peaceful. The children spoke to her freely now, even if she responded with only a few words. Her presence alone seemed comforting to them. Inside the house, the oldest woman was cleaning the kitchen, while the middle one worked on sewing a torn jacket. The rancher realized something then. These women were not just guests. They were becoming part of the home slowly, quietly, naturally. He felt unsure about what it meant. But he also felt grateful. His children had someone to guide them. The house had warmth again. The long evenings did not feel empty anymore. One night after supper, the oldest woman finally spoke to him directly. Her words were slow, but clear. She thanked him for treating them with respect. She said they were still afraid but were beginning to feel safe. Hearing her say that stirred something deep in him. He had not expected gratitude. He had simply done what he believed was right. He nodded, telling her they were welcome here for as long as they wished. Her eyes softened, and she shared a brief smile before returning to her work. That moment stayed with him long after the others went to sleep. He realized that trust was beginning to form something delicate, like a small flame growing in the darkness. It was not forced. It was not taken. It was simply happening. And as he sat there in the quiet night, he felt something he had not felt in a long time, a sense of family, shaped not by blood or promises, but by kindness, patience, and the unexpected turning of fate. Something was changing on the ranch, and he knew it was only the beginning.